Chapter 16. Other than the last note, things were quiet for a few days after Brandon was banished, and I hoped that it meant the notes and harassment were over. But in less than a week, I started receiving calls. At first, I didn't think much about them. I would answer a call and no one would be on the other end. I dismissed them as wrong numbers and hung up. But by Wednesday, I was getting several calls a day at all hours, and they were no longer silent, they'd progressed. The number the calls came from was always blocked or anonymous, so I couldn't track them. At 2 a.m. Thursday morning, my PCD rang, waking me from a sound sleep. I dragged my eyes open, trying to remember where I was and where the sound was coming from. The warm chest I was snuggled up against reminded me that I was in Devon's bed. I slid away, trying not to wake him, and reached for my PCD where it laid on the nightstand. I picked it up and slipped out of the bedroom before hitting the button to answer it. Hello. My voice was thick with sleep. You thought you could get away with it, didn't you? Came a snarling reply. Get away with what? I asked, confused. You know what I mean. The voice turned angry. You think you can get away with having people punished and exiled because you prefer an imposter over a real kitsune. Is this over, Brandon? I was finally awake enough to realize what he was talking about. So you do know what I'm talking about. I didn't get Brandon punished, and I didn't get him exiled. I said firmly, my patience was exhausted for this crap, especially when it woke me from a good night's sleep. He managed to do it to himself. I didn't make him do anything that the Aniquitos would have issue with. He did it all on his own, despite my asking him to stop several times. So no, I didn't think I would get away with anything. I haven't done anything wrong. I never raised my voice, mindful of Devon sleeping in the next room. Now if you're through with your stupid shit, I'm going back to bed. Back to that imposter's bed. He snarled again. You could have a real kitsune, but you chose that imposter. You'll pay for that. I was done. I disconnected the call and turned off the ringer. Just to be safe, I left the device in the living room when I slipped back into the bedroom. I slowly, gently slid back into bed, trying not to wake Devon. I just settled in next to him when he spoke. What was that all about? I guess they got tired of silent calls. They spoke? Did they ever? Who was it? Could you tell? I don't know, some friend of Brandon's, I could tell that much. Was there anything to be concerned about, or were they just continuing the harassment? Mostly harassment, but he made a few vague threats while he was talking. Threats? What kind of threats? That got his attention. Nothing specific, just vague shit. You thought you could get away with it, and you'll pay kind of stuff. I'm not concerned. I am. He rolled until he could look me in the eye. It's escalating. They haven't damaged anything of yours yet, but they've shown with my truck and bike that they're not above destroying things. You're right. And at the rate they're escalating things, I wouldn't be surprised if they up the stakes to physical violence before long. Attacking people, not just things. I'm worried about you. I'm not worried about myself, but I am worried about my family. I admitted. None of them would stand a chance against one of us determined to hurt them. That is what worries me. I leaned closer and laid my cheek against his bare chest, rubbing my face against his skin and breathing in his scent. I can take anything they try to do to me. It's hurting my family I couldn't handle. He wrapped his arms around me and pulled me up against him. I know. He kissed the top of my head softly. I know. We laid together in the darkness, each lost in our own thoughts as we drifted off to sleep again. Later that morning, Bill called. He said he needed to meet with me and he asked us to come by that afternoon. Devon and I went to the meeting with Bill together. I suspected that he'd found a non-shifter he wanted us to meet, and I was a little nervous to hear about it. At least he'd requested that Devon and I come together. That had helped my nerves. We showed up at about 4. Devon had come in from work, cleaned up, and we went right over. Terry answered the door and escorted us to Bill's office. We exchanged greetings, but Terry seemed tense and didn't offer to chat. Bill was sitting at his desk when I knocked on the open door. Bill looked up at the sound and smiled. "There you are. Come on in and have a seat." He stood and motioned to the seating area on the other end of the long, narrow room. "Can I get you anything to drink?" he asked, as if we were guests and not pack members he'd requested a meeting with. We both refused drinks, preferring to find out why we were there. We sat together on the long leather sofa, across from the chair I normally sat in when I was alone, so that we could stay together. Bill sat in the other chair. "You've probably guessed that I've found a non-shifter I'd like you to meet," Bill said. I nodded, not knowing what to say, and Bill continued. "His name is Reese, he's 35 and lives in Seattle, though that's not where he's originally from. I'd like for the two of you to take a trip up there. The pack will naturally cover your expenses. Meet him, I'll get the information, and we'll figure out a reason for you to meet with him. See if you think you can shift him, Nickie. What do you say?" "I'd be willing to meet him, but I need at least a couple of weeks to get the time off work." "Not a problem, we're not in a hurry here. I'd just like you to go see him." "If you're not in a hurry, I think I can help with the reason for the trip." Devon spoke up. "Oh?" Bill asked. "I have an army buddy who's getting married next month, in Seattle. He invited me to the wedding, but I didn't plan on going simply because I can't afford the trip. If you're looking for a plausible excuse for us to make the trip, it's perfect." "I should be able to get time off next month," I said. Bill nodded. "That will work. Let me know the date, and I'll get everything set up." "Is that everything you wanted to see us about?" I asked. Bill nodded. "Yes, that's all I needed to see you for." "All right, then I have something I need to tell you about." I knew it had to be done, and I hadn't told him when he called this morning, simply because meeting in person this evening would let me see his face and watch his reactions as I told him about the calls. About how they had started out innocent enough, but quickly escalated to the threatening call that woke me that morning. Bill listened to the whole thing, looking grim. "I see." He was quiet for a few seconds. "You're sure it wasn't Brandon?" I shook my head. It wasn't Brandon, it wasn't his voice. He didn't talk like Brandon. The only thing that clued me in that it was about Brandon was that he said punishment, banished, and imposter. Brandon started calling Devon imposter after he shifted. "And have you received any calls since? Threats or even the silent ones?" Bill asked, and Devon looked at me, waiting for the answer. I shook my head again. "Nothing. I was getting 3 or more calls a day from Monday to last night, but I've gotten nothing all day." Bill seemed to be lost in thought. "I'll have someone look into it." He looked back to me. "I want you to be careful. If it's the same people who destroyed the motorcycle, there's no way to know when, or if, they'll turn to bodily harm to get the results they want." "I will, sir." I used the term of respect out of habit. It was something my parents had drilled into us. "I'm less worried about myself than about my family." I shared. "I'm tough and I can take it if they attack me, even if I can't take them. My family can't, and Cameron and Brittany and her family have no clue that there is even a threat out there. Not knowing about the kitsune should keep them safe," Bill said. "Most of the pack fears me enough that they won't risk exposing our secret by attacking someone who doesn't know. Your parents and Rain should be safe for the same reason. They know, but very few people know that they know, so they won't risk it." "But still," I started. "If it will make you feel better, I'll have someone check on them periodically. And I'm going to have someone look into who could be making the calls too. It could be any of Brandon's friends, but we'll see if we can figure it out." "Thanks." My shoulders sagged with relief. It meant a lot to me that Bill would take my fears seriously. We visited for a while longer, then Devon and I left. We already had plans to go to his parents for dinner that night.